まずはじめはキーノート1、宇宙美容シンポジウム基調講演ということで、宇宙業界で目覚ましくご活躍されている宇宙ビジネスコンサルタントの森弘和さんにお願いしたいと思います。森さんには最近の宇宙業界の動向、日本、世界での国や企業の取り組みをビジネスからの視点でお話しいただきます。これからの有人宇宙の動向や宇宙美容についても言及していただきますので、ぜひお楽しみいただければと思います。それでは森さん、よろしくお願いいたします。
皆さん今ご紹介に上がりました森と申します。少しちょっと声が枯れているんですけど、今週スペースタイドっていうね大きなカンファレンスがあって、ずっと1日15時間ぐらい喋っているうちに若干声枯れていますが、ゆっくり話したいと思います。でちょっとスライドを上げていただければと思うんですけれども、本日今までと同じように1回2回目3回目ずっと近年の有人関連の宇宙ビジネスのトレンドを話すというところをやってきまして、今回第4回目になりまして、毎回おなじみのといいますか、ちょっと肩書きが多い人っていうのはもう知ってる人は知ってるんですけれども、なんと6ヶ月前からまた2個増えまして、大分県さんですね、地方政府になりますけれども、地位付けの宇宙関連の技術顧問になったり、あと新しいコンサルファームのコンサルティングをする会社さんの役員になったりなど2つぐらい増えまして、依然基本的に有人系のことが多くやってたり、あとは英国政府とか内閣府のアドバイザリーっていうのも引き続きやっております。で本日お話ししたいのが、有人宇宙産業のトレンドですね。特にやはり過去 3から6ヶ月に大きな、国主導のプロジェクトが進んでいるところも数多くありますので、そちらをかいつまんでお話しさせていただき、あとは日本とあと各国、地域ごとのどれだけ有人宇宙開発が進んでいるかというところをね、かいつまんでお話しできたらなと思います。じゃあ次のページお願いいたします。また次のページお願いします。はい、これが概要、本日お話ししたい概要なんですけれども、ここに書いてある8つの国ですかねが一番有人関連だと、大きなニュースがあったかなという地域になります。で、2021年1月のNASA の CDL って言われるんですね。英語で言うとコマーシャルデスティネーション・イン・ローアース・オービットっていうプロジェクトを実は NASA が始めたのが、実は最近のこの宇宙ステーション、民間企業やる流れの始まりで、もう今から2年半前ぐらいですね。そこからアメリカでは3、4個構想を進めてきて開発も進めてますし、日本も民間企業が主体としてですねやる宇宙ステーション計画も出てきて、中国はもう去年の年末ぐらいからですかね、もう独自で作り始めちゃってますし、インドも今開発を始めてますね。モジュールレベルだっていうぐらいで進んできております。でまたページ動かしていただいて、もう1ページですね。で日本の話ですけれども、ここは前回第3回でもお話しさせていただいたところと被るところもちょこちょこあるんですけれども、振り返りという面で言うと、主に3社ですから、日本でやっているのは。でデジタルブラスト社っていうところが、新しく独自でやると言い始めた会社で、ちょうど3から6ヶ月前ぐらいですかね、発表しまして、それ以外だと日本だと三井物産さんが米国のアクションスペースっていうね、もう数年後には打ち上げる宇宙ステーションと組んでやっているビジネスもありますし、金松さんはシエラスペースと呼ばれるようなアマゾンのジェフ・ベソスが立ち上げたブルーオリジンと組んでいる会社なんですけれども、そのシエラスペースとブルーオリジンがやろうとしているオービタルリーフっていう宇宙ステーションを一緒に利活用していくっていうプロジェクトもやってます。はい、また次のページお願いいたします。で1個新しいところで言うと、今デジタルブラストさんの CSS、コマーシャルスペースステーションですね。インターナショナルじゃなくて商業宇宙ステーションですかね、日本語訳するとっていうのがありまして、やっぱ面白いのは、宇宙ステーションの計画自体はもうアメリカにね4つぐらいあるので、入荷っていうとそれほどでもないかもしれないですけど、ちゃんと活用戦略とか計画を立てて出しているってところが結構新しいかなと思いまして、詳細はちょっとここでは載せられないんですけど、見ての通りこの宇宙ステーションを作って宇宙ステーション内で何するっていう話はよくあるんですけど、そこをハブにして、輸送のハブにする時のタイムラインだったりだとか、どう利活用するかっていうところも具体化して発表したっていうところは面白いなというところでありました。気になる方はウェブページとかでもう少し詳細情報あるんで見てみてください。次のページお願いいたします。 はい、でこちらあんまりニュースで出てないんですけれども、私もちょうどこのスカパー JSAT、皆さん聞いたことあると思うんですけれども、ちょうど取締役社長の米倉さんがワシントン DC で発表するとき、私もちょうど言ってたんですけれども、ヤマトプロジェクトという通称言われるような静止軌道ですね。ISS が大体400km 弱なんですけど、3万6000キロのところにですね、有人かどうかとかまで全部発表してないんですけれども、宇宙ステーションを2040年までに置くっていうプロジェクトも発表していてですね、やはりスカパー JSAT ってずっと昔からもう今16個かな運用してるんですけども、衛星を静止軌道に打ち上げる、ノウハウがあるので、それを活用して、近年の宇宙ステーションのトレンドに合わせて打ち上げるっていう発表を代表取締役がしたっていうのは一個大きいところでございます。詳細はあまり情報が出てないのでこれは話せないんですけれども、今後2040年がターゲットなんで、5年10年15年後ぐらいをマイルストーンにちょっとずつ発表があるかなと予想されます。次のページお願いいたします。また次のページですね。はい、でここはまた最新情報ベースでお話しできるかなと思うんですけど、米国で先ほど話した、フロントの方にあった3社と4社目のノースロップグラマンアクシオムですね。でこちらも大体スペックですかね、もう発表されておりまして、一番早いのはちょっと文字が小さくて見づらいかもしれないですけど、一番表の右側のアクシオムスペースですね。もうこれはもう2024年、もう来年にはもう1個目のモジュールをですね打ち上げて ISS とドッキングして運用をし始めるというところで、いろんなニュースを業界で聞いていると、開発はほぼ想定通りいっているということなので、2024年には打ち上がるかなというところで、そこが商用という面でいうと宇宙ステーションが打ち上げ始まる時期かなというところで、他はオービタルリーフが次追っているかなぐらいで、スターラブとスターラブは確かオハイオ州で今作り始めて、でベースモジュって言われるようなノースロップグラマンがやっているところはあまり情報が出てないので、私もちょっとよくわからないっていう感じですね。でこんな感じで4つが戦いあってですね、NASA 選定するのはおそらく1社か2社って言われていますので、多ければこのうちの2個の宇宙ステーションが2030年ぐらいをめどにですね打ち上がって稼働を開始するかなとみんな業界の人は見ております。次のページお願いいたします。はい、で他面白いところで言うと、アルテミス協定って言われるような、皆さん宇宙に興味あれば聞いたことあるかもしれないんですけど、アルテミス計画ですね。アポロ計画の継続プロジェクトと言われるやつですけれども、アメリカはいろんな諸国、日本も入ってますけれども、いろんな国と協力して月面開発、その先の火星探査を進めようとしておりまして、直近もう6ヶ月ぐらいで、5、6カ国ぐらい大きな国も含めて実は参画しております。ちょっと本当2週間ぐらいの中にですね、ここに書いてない 2カ国、エクアドルとインドも参画したんで、実は25じゃなくて27カ国なんですけれども、どんどんと、先進国といいますか、宇宙開発進んでいる国もどんどん入ってきて、スペインも3、4ヶ月前に入りましたし、なんか派閥争いっていうんですかね、が出てきたかなっていうところであります。で面白いところはアフリカも入ってきていますし、見ての通りNASA の長官がわざわざアフリカまで行ってナイジェリアとルワンダの宇宙機関の長ないしは大統領と一緒に話し合って決めてサインしてもらって様子が大体6ヶ月前にもありました。次のページお願いいたします。でまた一つ面白いのが、今年の4月の終わり5月の始まりに、アルテミス計画って話は業界の人だと5年前とかから聞いた話なんですけれども、具体的な計画が噂ベースで分からなかったところが火星に行くっていう話ですね。ようやく NASA が公式文書として出しました。で俗に言う M2M 文書ですね、ムーントゥーマースっていう意味ですね、月から火星っていう意味での戦略を作りまして、なんと実はあまり知られてないんですけど、 NASA 本部内に M2M 部署ですね、月から火星への輸送する専門部署もできるぐらい本腰入れて実はやっております。でこの文書の中面白いのは、これから予算取りしていくっていう意味もあると思うんですけど、人類にどれだけ貢献するかっていうのは体系づけて書いてですね、基本的にサイエンスとインスピレーションと、国家の国威になりますかどうかっていうことですね。その軸にですね、どういう面でどれだけ貢献するかっていうを具体的にリストアップしていて、この文書自体はもう100ページぐらいの文書ですごい細かく書いてあって紹介できないんですけれども、細かいプランを2030年40年まで実際に描き上げてるっていうところがもう皆さん参考になる、これをもとに各国、どこの部分協力するか、そういう話がこれから進むかなってことが予想されます。次のページお願いいたします。 はい、でこれがさらっとですけれども、もう1、2ヶ月前に中国もですね、アルテミス協定を真似し始めたっていうところで、ILRSCO のインターナショナル・ルナー・リサーチ・ステーション・コーポレーション・オーガナイゼーションっていうのを作ってですね、いろんな国が入っていって、良くも悪くも冷戦時みたいな動きが今までも言われてはいたんですけれども、公式に形づいてきたっていうところがありますね。で入ってくるところで言うと、中ロの中心となるところなんで、中東とか南米のチリとかそういうところがもうすでに10カ国ぐらい入っております。でロシアが最近ちょっと抜け始めて、中国が中心になっているグループですね。これもまた同じく月面探査、月面基地計画を立てていて、もう具体的に2030年代に5回打ち上げで何をどこに建てるかっていうプランももう公開してます。中国語と英語ベースですね。次のページお願いします。はい、で最後ですね、もういろいろ細かいこと話しましたけれども、基本的に民間による宇宙ステーション開発フェーズも進んできて、で日本だと、ポスト ISS って話もあったりだとか、民間の企業者が主題してやるものが出てきてますし、諸外国だとやっぱり米国を中心に4社ぐらいありますけど、特にアクシオムの打ち上げ来年なので、それが注目というところと、最後は今言った米国グループ、中国グループの形づけられるところがもっと具体化してきて、もう今年来年ぐらいにもう国がどこを担当するかとかで、その各国のどの企業がどこを担当するかっていう具体例も出てくるかなと思いますので、そこは注目ですね。皆さん参入する場合はどこの企業と話した方がいいっていうのも分かりやすくなるかなと思います。はい、以上となります。皆さんご清聴いただきありがとうございました。
はい、森さんありがとうございました。いや、なんかもうプレイヤーがどんどん出てきてますし、だからもうアンテナを張り続けてないと置いてけぼりになるような感覚もありますよね。そうなんですよ。
27カ国あって、英語じゃ情報を取れないところもあるんで、はい、スペイン語でね情報を取ったりとかやらないと分かんない戦略とかもあるんで、はい、自分はちょこちょこ見てます。はい、そういうとこも
スペイン語とかのページも見つつ、
中国語でも見た方がいいとか見た方がいいですね。
そうですよね。いやもう本当中国のね勢いが凄まじいですから、もうこれからね ISS 国際宇宙ステーションが終わりを迎えていく中で、もう中国の宇宙ステーションだけが地球にね、軌道上にとどまっているという状況を許さないというために、どんどんアメリカの民間だったりが入ってきてると。
そうですね、アメリカの国のプライドも正直ありますね。このままだとね、2030年だと中国だけになっちゃうので。
そうですよね。なんかね、宇宙っていうと人類のねみんなのっていうねイメージもありつつ、でもやっぱ国家間のね競争もありつつということで、
平和的な競争であればね、メリットが多いと思うんで、いいと思うんですけど、やっぱ結局プライドはありますよね。
はい、本当に分かりやすくお話ししていただきました。森さんありがとうございます。さあここからは、引き続き森さんには残っていただいて、パネルディスカッション1へと進みたいと思います。今回のパネルディスカッション1は、初めてですね、海外の方からもZoom でおつなぎして参加していただけるということで、今回、パネリストの皆様と、宇宙美容シンポジウムをつないでくださった方がいらっしゃるんです。LA に在住されていらっしゃいます宇宙ホスピタリティスペシャリストの正江さんです。正江さん、こんにちは。
もうここから英語で挨拶をしても大丈夫ですか？
はい、もちろんです。よろしくお願いいたします。
はい、皆さんよろしくお願いします。Hi, my name is Masai Brightman. I'm an executive hospitality advisor for Space Cosmetology Organization. Thank you very much all for coming today. I'm currently working on my space hospitality research as an outer space hospitality specialist with the goal of becoming a future executive space hotelier. Space travel has a lot of risks that need to be reduced. But how can we combine hospitality with space travel to make space travel safe, seamless, and provide premium value for the high cost of space travel? And can only 5-star hotels and experienced flight attendants make this happen? If that is the answer, how many people are willing to go through the intense screening and training process to become a space hotelier? And what kind of health standards and the level of expertise are required for those of us who are not astronauts to work in space under such a harsh working environment? What kind of education is required to train space hotelier personnel? In order to solve the issues, I'm conducting research with space experts from diverse fields, incorporating the perspective of space beauty and presenting the results to the world. In addition, I'm currently working in Los Angeles, where I live, to bridge the gap between Japan and US in the field of space tourism. So here we are. The development of space tourism would not be possible without the cooperation of various specialists and international corporations. I'm very, very pleased to have such a great group of space experts from the United States at the symposium for the first time. And I hope that this event will lead to the development of the space tourism industry, as well as the space beauty industry in the US and Japan. I am looking forward to the discussion that will take place today on space beauty from these unique perspectives. Now I'd like to turn it over to our wonderful panelists from the United States.
Right, thank you, Masae, and you can see me here, right? Okay, then, thank you, Masae, for kindly introducing three panelists to us, and hereby we can start the panel. And let me speak in Japanese here. ここからですね、案内やったように基本的に私たちとこのパネリスト3人は英語でディスカッションしますけれども、後半皆さんからの質問のコーナーも20分ぐらいありますので、それは日本語で質問いただいて私が取ってディスカッションした後皆さんにも返せるようにしたいと思いますので、はい、英語でもできるって人はそのまま英語で聞いちゃっても大丈夫ですけども、はい、私も翻訳もしたいと思います。では浅井さんありがとうございました。じゃあここからはパネル始めたいと思います。So, hey John, Kirby, Shahreen.
Hello, good to be with you.
Right, are you ready now?
Absolutely.
Right, so in that case we will start. First, we would like to start with your self-introduction. And starting with John, could you introduce yourself, and after that, we'll preview your slides.
Sure. Hello, everyone. I appreciate the opportunity to share some ideas and some background on the space tourism industry with you. I'm John Spencer. I'm an outer space architect, one of the very first in that area. And I am the founder and president of the Space Tourism Society. One of our programs focuses on what we call the big picture, which we call the space experience economy. So next, please. The core of all of our work, our efforts, which works directly with your symposium today, is the quality and uniqueness of the space experience. We're not in the rocket business or even the travel business. We're in the experience business, and that's always our focus in all of our programming. So what you're pioneering in the cosmetics and hairstyle, fashion area fits perfectly into contributing to creating a wonderful space experience. Next, please. We define space experience in three main areas. They are real space experiences. There's Earth-based experiences, such as going to a space museum, a space attraction, and there's space media, movies and TV, and virtual worlds. Because of that diversity, many people from different backgrounds, particularly the creative fields, can become more and more involved, and they are, in the growing space experience economy. Next. What's wonderful about our growing industry is that throughout a lifetime, you can go through ever increasingly real space experiences, from going to a space museum, a zero gravity flight, a suborbital flight, and real space flight. And every time you go up this ladder, it takes more time, it's more risky, but it's more real experiences. Next, please. One of the areas that I've been pioneering, and I created this, is the idea of orbital super yachting, modeled after ocean-going super yachts. And this is my concept and design for a real orbital super yacht whose name is Destiny. This yacht would be assembled in Earth orbit and provide the same type of experiences you have on ocean-going super yachts, but in the oceans of Earth orbit. This is a very fun project to design. Next. And these are just some of the activities you'd have on board an orbital super yacht. That circle is actually a hot tub in zero gravity because water in zero gravity forms a sphere. There will be space weddings in orbit and eventually on the moon. So you'll basically have weddings on the moon and real moon honeymoons. So all of the issues related to cosmology for space weddings are going to come to be a bigger part of our industry. Next. Now, Earth space attractions and things. So this is a project which I created with investment groups called Mars World. It's an Earth-based space simulation of a city of the future on Mars. And we will need hundreds of designers and writers and filmmakers and costume people to bring this Mars world to life. So that's another part of the space experience economy, Earth space experiences. Next. And of course, there's movies and television and virtual worlds. I'm actually born and raised here in Los Angeles. So I've been involved in the entertainment industry most of my life as a consultant at major movies and TV shows. And that's growing around the world, space media. And there will be real space media shot in Earth orbit and eventually on the moon. Next, please. And our philosophy is basically the best way to predict the future is to invent it. So thank you very much for the opportunity to share this with you. Looking forward to our discussion. And ultimately, again, it's all about the experience and how do we make the experiences wonderful, memorable, and important. Thank you.
Thank you, John. Can you hear a big applause from the audience? Yeah. Well,
Yeah,
they loved your they loved your visuals as well. Yeah. And let me briefly explain what you do in Japanese as well, just in case. ジョンさんはですね、もう実はもう自分が生まれる前なんで、もう1985年ぐらいから米国だともう宇宙旅行に関しての調査とかずっと続けていて、結構有名人です、LA にとかなんで。なので、こういう今画像ありましたけど、直近5年とかで作ったんじゃなくて、もう35年前ぐらいからずっと作ってるっていう、はい、もう長年の経験があります。はい。Right, thank you, John. So, up next, Kirby, would you mind introducing yourself?
Yes, hello. It's an absolute honor to be with you today. My name is Dr. Kirby Runyon, and I have a dual career. In one track of my career, I'm a planetary geology research scientist working alongside of NASA, and I study the rocky landscapes on the moon and planets. But similar to John, I also work in space-themed tourism, running expeditions, doing space-themed entertainment and space-themed education. I'm also a public speaker. And one of my messages is that I want to bring the transcendent awe of the space experience to everybody, not just science nerds, people who just are interested in science, because space exploration and space experiences are really for everybody. I'm also a zero gravity coach and authorized reseller with the Zero Gravity Corporation. And I like to bring a planetary themed experience to people's flights in reduced gravity. And I'm also the CEO and founder of my company, planx.space. And before we go on to the other slides, I'd like you to just play my 1-minute sizzle video, please, because I think the video will explain better than I can in words what I do. So thank you for playing that, and it's my hope that through speaking at your space cosmetology workshop, we'll be able to make some connections between how people can experience space exploration with cosmetics. Like I said, I like to bring the planets down to Earth in my public presentations. As a planetary geologist who works on the moon and Mars and other places in the solar system, I like to make the planets relatable to people's everyday experiences on Earth through public presentations, kind of like this. Next slide, please. As the video also mentioned, I run zero gravity tours with the Zero Gravity Corporation. It's a Boeing 727 aircraft that flies a series of arcs through the sky, and every time you go over the top of an arc, you experience 20 seconds of zero gravity, or we can also dial in Mars gravity or moon gravity. And in so doing, we take a gravitational tour across the solar system's planets and moons. And I connect people's experience on the aircraft with the cutting edge of space exploration. And then in the final slide, I believe it shows the astronaut geology training that I do for people wanting to experience the planets on Earth. I take people to different places in the southwest of the United States that have lava flows and sand dunes and craters very similar to what people and astronauts and space tourists will experience on the moon and Mars. And so you can get a little taste of the solar system without having to leave Earth, and have a little bit of geologically informed enthusiasm about your space experience. So I run all of this through my company, planx.space, and I'd be honored if you visited my website and connected.
Thanks, Kirby. Yeah, let me translate and then briefly explain what you said in Japanese just in case. カービーはですね、皆さんムービーを見て分かったかもしれないんですけれども、放物線軌道で微重量空間の訓練とかツアーやったりだとか、あと宇宙飛行士のよく皆さん詳しいかもしれないんですけどね、地学的な探査とかやるトレーニングとかやったりとかして、結構現場を宇宙飛行士の仕事をやったりとかしてたり、あと旅行関連もやってる人です。So thanks, Kavi. Right. And the last, Shahreen, could you elaborate on what you do, and also we will show your slide probably when you are ready to share. Right?
Absolutely. I'm Shahreen Reza. I'm the CEO of Astrius. We are the first commercial company focusing on astronaut nutrition and space. My team is an amazing one that consists of NASA astronauts, as well as food scientists, nutritionists. We have a famous chocolatier. And what's most important is the experience of space would be, for me, severely lacking if it wasn't luxurious food that also is high impact when it comes to the function of performance. Before I present the slides, I'd love to actually share our sizzle reel. May you play that, please? Thank you so much. I'm going to share some slides with you just to explain further our work. So Astrius was designed for astronauts, but really it's optimized for elite performers everywhere, whether in space or on Earth. And for us, what was also really important was looking at the international, sorry, one second. The international representation, and we've always regarded JAXA as one with great admiration. We had an opportunity to interview many NASA astronauts, and time and again, the Japanese food came across as being the most popular and the most tasty in space. And the reason for it is quite interesting, because when it comes to the need to improve space food, very little has changed over the past 50 years. One of our team members, NASA astronaut Greg Shamatov, really identified why personal nutrition is so critical in space. We also had the advantage of speaking with Vicki Cloris, who was the former head of the NASA Space Food Lab from 1986 to 2018, and she really explained why it is critical to have the improvement of space food. So one of the questions that's often asked is, why is it even important to have pleasurable food experiences in space? And the truth of the matter is that when it comes to a high-functioning astronaut, there is a need for food that not just fuels them, but gives them performance and pleasure. According to a report by ESA, astronauts on the ISS aren't even consuming enough calories to meet their daily energy requirements today. Now, when we're talking about deep space missions, such as the mission to Mars, we can realize that the adverse effect of not having the basic caloric intake would also impact their performance in space. So then why is it that astronauts aren't eating food when they do have that supply of what would be required for their daily nutritional needs? And this brings us to the concept of flavor. Now, when we talk about flavor, it's not just what you taste in your mouth. There's actually a whole psychological component of what we think tastes good. And one of them is the smell, the oral referral, because 75% of what we think is taste is actually what we smell. And as Greg Shamatov reported, when it comes to that sensory perception of smell and taste in space, it does change with microgravity. One of the reasons is because of the body fluid shift. So when you're in microgravity, the blood shifts to the head, and it's quite similar to having a head cold. It's one of the reasons why during COVID, many people reported that they couldn't taste because they were unable to smell. So for us, what was important is when we look at that aesthetic of olfaction, how can we really improve it? And this is where a lot of Eastern flavors come into play, because when it comes to trigeminal stimulation, other elements of having the oral refraction, we're talking about ingredients such as wasabi, which sort of sends that heated element, as well as ginger and cinnamon and spices. So for us, when it came to flavor, it was not just the ingredients, but also the powerful memories that are associated. I'm currently in Paris. Our company is based in Silicon Valley, but Marcel Proust actually talked about Madeleine effect, where you can travel through time by eating food, because when you take a bite of something that reminds you of childhood, just having that smell and that first experience of tasting it will take you right back to childhood. Now, when it comes to flavor preferences, many of them are impacted by culture, many are learned, and others are just a part of your DNA, which is why things like cilantro might be desirable by some, and for others it tastes like soap. And for us, what was really critical was looking at not just the Western palate, but also the Eastern palate. However, universally, everyone loves chocolate. And this is one of the reasons why our first product is a highly nutritious dark chocolate truffle. And what we did is we understood that there is a micronutrient gap between what astronauts are eating and what they really require. And this gap also translates to many of us on Earth, where we don't necessarily have all the nutrients we need in a day. This is why Astrius Ultra actually has within it your core multivitamins. We're talking about folic acid, vitamin B6, B12, vitamin D. But in addition to that, we've included nootropics that help you with memory and focus. Lion's mane mushroom was one that we identified, and we know that the Japanese actually started taking this centuries ago. So for us, the realization through many peer-reviewed journals is it helps you with neurogenesis. Acetylcholine improves your memory and focus. And then we also include caffeine from coffee beans and L-theanine from white tea. But it isn't just about having food that tastes delicious. It's important to note that what you eat also impacts how you look and feel in your skin. And so skin health is something that I care a lot about. I have eczema, and our COO, Scott Parazynski, is a former NASA astronaut. He's also a US medical doctor, and he's an Olympian. And so something that he identified, he comes from Harvard, and it's that skin axis, which is interconnected. What you eat impacts your skin, but also how your brain feels when it comes to food. Now, the skin is constantly exposed to the external world, and that's why it is susceptible to a lot of the environmental stressors. And when it comes to space travel, that does take a toll on astronauts. In fact, there have been many studies that have proven that it may even speed up the aging process. Astronauts have reported drier and thinner skin while they're in orbit. What you eat impacts the skin, but also there are other elements that we can use to help you in your beauty. One of my team members, he's Korean, and he is now adapting a very unique formulation that is a face mask, which would be impactful in space. But when it comes to what happens to your health, the other element that we really care about is your eye health. Again, in the past, a lot of astronauts were eating a lot of salt because they thought that the salt would give them flavor. If you eat too much salt, it actually has led to cases of blindness in space. And so it's not just the ingredients, but other elements that you can incorporate. And for us, it was something like meditation and breath work. According to NASA, severe sleep deprivation, as well as coexisting in confined environments and performance pressure, all put tremendous stress on astronauts. And this stress also impacts your skin and the way you feel and the way you eat. So we're looking at having elements of meditation and breath work. When you have mindful breathing, that increases the oxygen supply to the skin. And meditation also helps manage stressors that induce inflammation. So for us, it was looking at the full 360 and a holistic approach when it comes to astronaut health and nutrition, which involves food. And at the end of the day, beauty is a very critical component of how you feel with what you eat. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Shahreen. Yeah, people here are giving applause here, though. Can you hear? No? Some few here. Okay. Well, let me translate briefly in Japanese again. So, シェリーンさんは基本的に今食系でずっとやっていて、実はこれ今出た食品も NASA に選ばれて火星に行くときに宇宙飛行士ないしは宇宙旅行者が食べるといい完全栄養食として実は認定も受けてたりとか、ちゃんと認定系もやっている事業者です。はい。So, Shahreen, thank you very much. Now all of you have done the introduction. We can go into the discussion. And we have, let's say, 25 minutes left. I will throw one question. Then after that, I will probably ask for audience to ask questions if they have any. If not, probably we can, I can throw you some questions, or any of you could ask questions to the other panelists. Right? And the first question I would like to throw is, all of you already have the business or any idea, concept, but most of them, I think it's based on ISS, so some of them it's based to related to the moon. Yeah, so we think within 10 years, people are starting to go back to the moon, right? In that case, what kind of more concrete cases or cosmetics or healthcare or this beauty industry can contribute to this moon exploration? In your opinion, then we can start from.
Yeah,
all right. Go ahead.
Go ahead, Shahreen.
No, please, Kirby. After you.
Oh, thank you. Okay. Yeah, in just a couple years, NASA astronauts will be headed back to the moon for the first time since 1972. In fact, at the end of next year, or at the beginning of 2025, 3 NASA astronauts and 1 Canadian astronaut, Jeremy Hansen, will fly around the moon as a precursor to landing on the moon. But I think we'll see space tourists follow very shortly thereafter, because SpaceX is providing the landing services not just for NASA, but also the flyby services for the space tourism industry. In fact, there have already been 3 SpaceX Starship flights booked to send tourists around the moon. And the regolith, the dirt, the soil on the surface of the moon is incredibly abrasive. Not just for your skin, but you can also breathe it in, and it can irritate the mucous membranes in your nose and in your lungs. And astronauts on the Apollo program in the 1960s and 70s had hay fever-like symptoms. And so, Shahreen, one thing I'm curious about is how you think, in addition to, well, the moon has gravity, it's not as much as Earth, so there are the gravitational effects and how that affects your flavor and smelling, but also how the lunar regolith, how the soil can interfere with your nose and mouth and ability to taste and smell.
Thank you so much. Two elements that we really found critical. I had the pleasure of speaking with Sian Proctor before she actually went up on the SpaceX mission, and she loves cooking. It's something that brings her tremendous joy and pleasure. When it comes to nutrition, we really looked at precision nutrition and understanding that everyone might have different nutritional needs. But when it comes to cooking, it's something that gives a lot of pleasure, but also the ability to cook something that they genuinely enjoy. The pleasure of working in the moon is that it has a different gravity. It's not quite zero gravity, and that really helps you cook in a different way. If you're in zero gravity, searing meat is very difficult. It's not so simple to have a kitchen on the ISS. It's very tight, confined space. So for us, we're actually looking at building out a very small galley for the moon when it comes to the future, when people will be living there and staying there for longer periods of time, understanding how you cook. And to do that, I love, John, that you were talking about yachts. One of our chefs was actually a chef on a yacht. And there is a lot of correlation between space and what happens underwater. And so to that extent, it's not just looking at the food, but how you prepare food, because that really will have a tremendous impact on how astronauts eat and how they feel in their skin. So passing it on to you, John, when it comes to food and water and that whole experience, how would you take that?
It depends on the different types of missions. If there are scientific missions, exploration missions, that's a different perspective than if you're going to have luxurious orbital super yachts where the owners require the best food in the world, but also beyond the food, the wine, the liquor. Some of the yacht people like to smoke cigars, and smoking cigars in space is interesting. The Russians have done that more than anybody knows. So all these luxury items that people will expect for high quality space experiences have to be researched. And what you're doing with the kitchen design and what Kirby's doing with exploring how do you deal with all the issues related to the lunar regolith need to be examined. And this is the exciting part. It really is, in almost all these areas, what I call exploring the design frontier. And in doing so, you can invent, discover, and have an extraordinarily exciting, interesting life by bringing new things to the world.
I love that, John. If I could just mention one thing, when it comes to drinks, we have a mixologist on our team. She's won many awards for making cocktails. And when it comes to space, something else we're working on is a beverage. And for that one, the original bit is a powdered form. It comes as a Tide Pod. You drop it in, you shake it, and you can drink it. But as we know, you can't just shake water in space because it actually will surround the container. So for us, it's looking at pleasure, the potential of having a mixologist create a beverage. And so for me, what you're mentioning also makes me think of having a bar in space, because it's not what you eat, it's what you drink and how that makes you feel.
Yeah, in major space movies, there's always a bar somewhere.
Yes.
Well, and with the high altitude ballooning that's going to be taking off with Worldview, it's going to the edge of space, if not completely to space, but they are intending to have a bar on there as well, but they'll still have full regular gravity.
Right, and a bathroom too.
And a bathroom, very important.
Very important, the bathroom.
Thanks, Vanessa. And I think, well, most things you said is not really commonly discussed here. So I'm sure our audience here learned lots. And I think I will start asking questions from the audience. 皆さんもしご質問があれば、今ちょっと食の話とかで一旦自由なディスカッションしたんですけど、残り多分15分ぐらいなんで、ちょっとオーディエンスの方からあまりこういう機会ないので質問があれば取りたいと思うんですけど。誰かあれば挙手いただければ何でも。
ありがとうございます。一つ質問なんですけど、こう民間というか本当に宇宙知識のない一般の方々もこう宇宙について語ったりこう考えたりすることって大事だと思うんですけど、最低限ここのなんていうか、例えば放射線あるよねとか。その酸素がないよねっていう本当最低限の知識があった上でアイディアを出したりディスカッションするともっとなんかこう生産的な話し合いになると思うんですよね。 なんでそこは大体どのぐらい抑えておいた方がいいかなっていう質問です。はい。
So yeah, we got the question that most of the people don't know anything about say space, right? Radiation, existence of radiation, or where oxygen disappear, where, at what layer of atmosphere it is, and she's wondering up to what kind of knowledge is needed to start having constructive, like conceptualization of space food or space anything. Does anyone has any, idea? I think most of you have been doing education stuff as well, right? Go ahead, sorry.
I love that you mentioned radiation. One of our team members actually did her PhD on how bones are affected by microgravity. Bones are also affected by radiation. And so for us, that research, when it comes to nutrition, we looked at whether there are ways of using effective counter-nutritional measures to help protect the bone. When it comes to radiation, you might be able to eat something that helps you, but there is no way to protect you entirely from radiation. So for us, we haven't found sort of a bulletproof solution, but there are definitely nutrients and supplements and ways that you can take this. That's one of the important reasons why we actually created a chocolate, because not a lot of astronauts like the pleasure of eating pills and capsules. And so in the past, there have been cases of just pills floating around because no one wants to take that on a regular basis. So when it comes to counter-nutritional measures, it's like, how can you create something that astronauts will take on a daily basis, which might help with composing yourself and not being so impacted by radiation?
I recently heard about an invention that's being worked on by a group at a university. Water is a very good shield for radiation. So a group has been developing a helmet type of thing, which would be comfortable in zero gravity, but has a few inches of water in it, which is not heavy because of the zero gravity. And when you're sleeping, or even if you're working, they're suggesting if the astronauts wear this helmet, that will reduce the amount of radiation they receive in their head, their brain. And it's a wonderful concept. It's an invention, a new idea, a new approach. And that's why I say exploring the design frontier on many, many different levels and in many, many different disciplines is the exciting part of exploring moving outward. But that's, I thought, a really interesting, cool idea. And someone totally outside of the aerospace engineering community invented that concept.
John, may I just ask you, I know you didn't invent it, but I'm curious, how would that impact your breathing if you're wearing something that's entirely by water? And how does that connect to your neck? Moreover, how can you sleep with a headgear that is composed of water when it comes to comfort? Do you know?
Well, the image I saw, it's all around your back, but not across the face. There's no weight to it because it's zero gravity. And it would be, they say, adjustable to a person, whether it's a woman's head with a lot of hair or a man's head a little bit bigger. But the point is they're exploring and experimenting with that as something that could prolong someone's professional career in space. Because if you're in space too much, you have radiation issues. And these astronauts and even crew members on orbital super yachts are really well-trained, valuable people. So how do you protect them and enhance their career longevity?
All right. I guess another point she wanted to ask is that, how could say, how could people who has zero knowledge of the space technology anything can start learning, about very basic knowledge of conceptualizing, space goodies such as food, cosmetics, and stuff. Do you have any recommendation? I guess you
come to the Space Cosmetology Conference. It's happening now.
All right.
Yeah,
Right. Okay. Yeah, definitely. Yeah, this is one of these. Okay. And let me translate the answer just in case. すみません、ちょっと長く今話してしまって、ちょっと違うディスカッションが始まっちゃったりしましたけれども、米国あるあるなんですけど、で基本的にやっぱりゼロベースの場合はやっぱり多分 何を考えていいか分かんない時があってもしたかし、ね、最近やっぱりこういうなんですかね、一般の人が出る学会みたいじゃないようなものでも、まさしくこういうシンポジウムとか行くと知ってる人がいるから、やっぱそういうところに参加してちょっと話してみると大抵ちょっとチャレンジしてみた人がいたりとかするので、聞いてみて、いやそれやっぱダメだよとか、例えば放射線だったら、水結構吸収するよってやれば水のレイヤーをどうにかプロダクトに足すとか、そういうのを教えてくれるんで、やっぱり人と話すのが早いと思います。PhD とかやるよりそれやるとね10年とかかかっちゃうんでね。はい、So yeah, I will ask audience for another question just in case. 他にもしもう1名ぐらい質問した人います。すみません、マイクを。
はい、いろいろ素敵なお話ありがとうございます。今いろいろな案とかを考えられてて、さっきのスペースヨットとかもとかも構想がすごく長くて、その中で今実現に向けて動かれていると思うんですけど、やっぱり実現するにあたっていろんな実現するまでのプロセスの中でいろんな変化もあったと思うので、そのあたりであるとか、あとはこれから宇宙に興味を持つ人にアプローチしていく必要があると思うんですけど、やっぱりいろんな体験とかを体験してもらうことで興味に持つ人っていうのも増えると思うんですけど、まずその一歩としてどういうふうに興味づけをされようと考えているのかであったりとか、よりみんなが宇宙を楽しく感じられるようにというところで、どのように考えられて今のそういう構想とかを考えられているのかをお伺いしたいです。
So the question is about, say, some of you have a solution on the product. If you are in a company, then, and now it's say like a space. So nations are coming up with many strategy like Artemis plan, but in order to say sell your service and making people who are not interested in space into space, do you have any magic solution, or is there anything you are already doing in order to say catch attention from the population who has not been interested in space?
Well, one of the themes of the message I like to share is that space exploration and the space experiences are for everybody, not just science people. There's an awful lot of beauty and awe in the cosmos, and a lot of the spacecraft missions that have gone into the solar system, including from Japan, have gone by asteroids and moons and planets, and just looking at the images on the internet are beautiful and awe-inspiring. And that's and a lot of people on Instagram and other social media post beautiful images of the cosmos. That's one way to get, for a non-science person to get engaged with this. But another way is with space experiences, going to space-themed entertainment around the world, which is something John's very much involved with.
Yeah, and I'm not. Sorry.
I can pick up on that just quickly. Is that everything we're involved with from a business and design and experience production standpoint is for a general audience, for people who are not directly involved in space. They're welcome to our events and our themed entertainment projects. And I do want to say something very important. Right now, there are billions of dollars being invested in private space enterprise and hundreds of companies in many different disciplines being formed and operated. So it's a whole renaissance of investment in ideas, creativity, and business ventures blossoming around the world, which is the most exciting time ever. So it's very open to anyone interested to get involved.
Yes, and I love that you mentioned the idea of film when you were speaking, John. Originally, I was actually a screenwriter, and I wanted to create a show about space food. And one of my mentors, David Shore, who did House and The Good Doctor, had mentioned to have such a concept, you have to bring together real scientists and real astronauts. And that was really the inception of my company. But bringing it back, everyone dreams of going to space. David Shore wanted to be an astronaut. When it comes to our product, we have a lot of athletes who take it, Olympic athletes. We have lawyers and doctors. But the connection to space is deeply inspiring. Something else people don't always realize is what's invented in space is often optimized on Earth. When my baby was born, he spent the first 3 days in the neonatal intensive care unit, and he was given baby formula. That's when I learned that the DHA that is actually in baby formula was created in space. They use the byproduct of algae to mimic the fatty acids in breast milk that lead to brain development. So oftentimes space is a very strong connection to innovation on Earth. And in turn, when we look at sci-fi films, that actually impacts what's invented because we love to create the future, and why not look at the imagination?
Well, thanks. Let me briefly translate. いろんな意見が今あったんですけど、基本的には映画とかそういう最近宇宙を体験するねツアーみたいなのもやってるパターンもありますけど、いろんなね施設とかもあったりしますんで、そういうところにちょっと誘ってみたりとか、そういう結構ライトなところをやっぱり誘ってから、こういうコアなプロダクト作りとかにこう誘い込むっていうのがやっぱり一番いいんじゃないかっていう話ではありました。So I guess this is going to be, and by the way, Shahreen, you mentioned about Scott Parlsky, right? Actually, he's one of my coworker at a company called Blue Abyss, where I'm a co-founder.
Oh, wow,
I didn't
what
know.
a small world.
Small world, yeah. He's our external advisor. I was a co-founder and VP there, but great to see, the sharing, the colleagues here. I guess this is it, right? So let me close. Thank you very much for all of the panelists, and also probably Masai-san. She's probably still here. I guess most of the things you mentioned is actually very new to the audience here. And also like a translated YouTube will be available on YouTube later on, so that, those who are interested in hearing, listening to the detail, you could do it later as well. So thank you all the panelists for attending. John, Kirby, Shahreen, please give a big applause to them. では拍手お願いいたします。Thank you. 今英語でアナウンスしたように、後ほどね翻訳されたバージョンも YouTube で皆さん見れますので、後日リンクを送付いたしますので、そちらも確認いただければ詳細も分かると思います。よろしくお願いします。では、
はい、森さん本当にありがとうございました。皆様森さんにも拍手をお願いします。はい。ということで、すごくね盛り上がった本当に時差を感じないというかすごく白熱した、パネルディスカッションになりました。ありがとうございました。